Shira, Shiru Hallelujah, Shiru Hallelujah, Ava, Ava Shira, Shiru Hallelujah, Shiru Hallelujah, Ava, Ava Shira, Shiru Hallelujah, Shiru Hallelujah, Hava, Hava Nashira, Shiru Hallelujah, Shiru Hallelujah, Hava, Hava Nashira, Shiru Hallelujah, Hava, Hava Nashira, Shiru Hallelujah, Hava, Hava Nashira, Shiru Hallelujah, Shiru Hallelujah, Hava.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good to see you with on what we are hoping is our last necessary Zoom Shabbat. Everybody, like, throw salt over your shoulder and go tfu tfu tfu. Okay, there you go. Throw it over. And you know, people are so eager to come that they're even showing up at synagogue without us having synagogue open tonight. So, you know, you gotta love the Jewish people and the spirit of Temple Israel. We're so happy that you could come tonight. And tonight is a very special Shabbat because it is known across the country as Repro Shabbat. Repro. Known as Repro Shabbat. I think this is the first year that it's really happening, but it's an NCJW opportunity, something that the National Council of Jewish Women has decided to make available to everybody who can take the opportunity this Shabbat to consider the value of reproductive rights and reproductive health. So tonight, there's going to be some sharing, and there's going to be some storytelling, and there's going to be some Storah telling. We're going to tell some really important words to kind of frame the incredibly important topic of reproductive health. So I'm giving you that little heads up that we're going to be doing that. And tonight, as we light our Shabbat candles in a moment, I just want to share with you one thing in a moment as we welcome the Shabbat angels, and we have our beautiful Shabbat table may be set. You know, people are in all different frames of mind this Shabbat. You know, I feel like people are super cold. You know, we're the frozen chosen. And we are also, I think, just there's a little cabin fever in the air. And yet I spent my afternoon connecting with so many of you, so many people. And I just feel like this really cherished community that we are in together. You are the angels in our life. We are the collective angels for one another. I can't tell you how great that feels, because it warms up all these frozen days. It really brings, it blocks out, you know, any contagion. There is such a feeling that comes and emanates from this community. The warmth that we are is just something that I truly, truly value. And I want to just welcome you tonight to Shabbat. And I'm so happy that we have our wonderful Rabbi Sam Klein here, who's going to fill us with some Shabbat song, beginning here with Shalom Aleichem. So you can do a little bit of this and pretend we're all in that circle together, okay? Welcoming the Shabbat angels who kept us safe all week and bring us to Shabbat.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, מלאכי העליון, מי מלך, מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא לכם. לכם השלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי העליון, מי מלך, מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ברכוני לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי העליון, מי מלך, מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. צאתכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי העליון, מי מלך, מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Rabbi Sam, I'm so interested in knowing what your favorite the Chadodi is going to be for tonight. Will you help us bring in the Shabbat with your song?
Absolutely. I hope you're all singing along with me at home. We'll just greet the Shabbat bride in the final verse, rising for the door. Here we go. שבת, בני שבת נקבלה, שמור וזכור, דיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד, שמו אחד. תפארת ולתחילה, יאי די די, יאללה די לך דודי, יאללה די לקראת קלה, יאללה די פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה, לקראת שבת. כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם לסוכה, סוף מעשה מחשבה תחילה, יאי די 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 לך דודי, יאללה די לקראת קלה, יאללה די פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה, התעוררי, התעוררי, כי Hurry, 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 shir da'eli, kivul Adonai, alayich nigla, yai dai dai, yala da da da, lecha dodi, yala da da da, likrat kala. פני שבת, פני שבת Please rise and face the door. Boi v'shalom, ateret parda, gam v'simcha u'sola, tochem punei al tzigula, boi chala.
Have a seat, everybody, but do find your candlesticks if you've got them there. I've got my little short candlesticks tonight, so I've got these here, and I hope that you'll light yours at home. If you happen to be, let's say, down in Atlanta with your sister, or right up in Worthington with your family, or somewhere in Bexley, maybe, Gehanna, etc. Wherever you are, we kind of are moving you closer to us with this motion as we make our blessing over the candles, moving you in. Come close. Forgive my screen. I have a little control there. Or if your daughter just joined you from New York, bring her in, welcome her in. Let's make the blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Have a seat. Come into your Shabbat, and we have a pause with Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgandal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabba, Yamad yivrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, Mechayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Bahangala u'vizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yeshmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'lam mehamaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitmomam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei gusha b'rechu le'ela minchu birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'ama v'imru. Amen. I invite you to please rise if you're able for Baruchu, the call to worship. I invite you to please join us in this reading of Ma'ariv Aravim. This is an hour of change. Within it, we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother and my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. I'd like to do the conclusion of Ahavat Olam, this prayer of marking eternal love that is with us always. We always must immerse in Torah to help guide ourselves, not only in the times of those who originally wrote this prayer thousands of years ago, but to continually immerse in Torah today, because it is our life and the length of our days as we reflect on it day and night. Please join me. Ki chem machayenu yorech yameinu uvahem negei omam v'layla negei omam v'layla ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael Ohev amo Yisrael. Please join me in the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vahem. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'lechtecha v'derech u'shokbecha u'vkumecha וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Let's read this part together. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there, except by joining hands and marching together.
Friends, I invite you to join in perhaps this new melody of Mi Chamocha, just to emphasize that we are on a path, we're on a derech, and we're doing our best to stay on it, following the light of God, even in the most trying of times. Goes like this. We are walking in the light of God. We are walking in the light of God. Try that. We are walking in the light of God. We are walking in the light of God. Next part goes like this. We are walking, we are walking, we are walking in the light of God. One more time. We are walking, we are walking, we are walking in the light of God. Okay, try with Mi Chamocha. Mi Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi Kamocha nehedar b'hakodesh. Mi Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi Kamocha nehedar b'hakodesh. Nohora tehilot osei osei pele. Nohora tehilot osei osei pele. We are walking in the light of God. We are walking in the light of God. We are walking in the light of God. We are walking in the light of God.
ונאמר כי פד אדוני את יעקב וגייलो מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גד ישראל. So, when people think about the, what's become tragically a very, very unfortunate conversation to my mind about reproductive health and rights of women, we forget so many people that are actually part of the picture. We forget about the men who are part of the picture. We forget about the middle school girl whose stepfather may have abused her and resulted in an unintended pregnancy. And these are uncomfortable things to talk about on Shabbat, but friends, tonight is the night where we just focus on it because we got to be ready to talk about it. Sometimes we forget about a college student who was walking on campus and had an unfortunate sexual assault. There's never a fortunate sexual assault. It's always terrible. But that can change her psyche and her body forever. We are thinking about all of the, in particular, young people of color, LGBTQ folks, people who are inevitably, tragically in this country, not getting quite as much medical attention, education, and so on. When it comes to the idea of reproductive health, abortion rights, and so on, it all comes down to choice. Of course, I choose life, you choose life, but that vocabulary can't be so completely, potent and toxic, because life is wonderful and choice is wonderful. And sometimes, and I don't see people who are pro-life in any way as being different than I am or different than anybody. We all want to choose life. That's what our Torah commands. So we have to come back to the people. It's about the people and the stories. It's about the vulnerable. We have to take care of the stranger, the widow, the orphan, and all those other people that we don't see who are affected by this issue. And their self-autonomy, their ability for self-determination, making good choices with the help of all kinds of other people that they need. So when we make this prayer for Hashkivenu tonight, what I really want to ask is that we are just holding all those unseen people and unheard voices that are part of this important debate in our country, which could truly change as soon as June of this year, when Roe v. Wade is set to be determined again, put in front of the Supreme Court through another related court suit. So all I want us to do is, when we ask for this shelter of peace, we think of all those people that just need shelter regardless of their preferences or their choices. And their situations are all to be held in God's hands, and indeed in ours as the Jewish people. We have to be ready to support that life, babies, mamas, men, children, all of us. We're all part of the conversation, and we're all part of God's love and shelter of peace. Let's sing together, Hashkivenu.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, v'hamideinu shomrein. Nu lechaim Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, v'hamideinu shomrein. Nu lechaim. Ushmor tzeiteinu, uvoeinu, lechaim u'shalom, me'ata ve'ad olam. Ushmor tzeiteinu, uvoeinu, lechaim u'shalom, me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, v'hamideinu shomrein. Nu lechaim Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, v'hamideinu shomrein. Nu lechaim. We join together as one community, always for eternity, to celebrate Shabbat. Please join us in V'shamru. Shamru b'nei Yisrael et haShabbat, v'asot et haShabbat l'dorot berit olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et haShabbat, v'asot et haShabbat l'dorot berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et haShabbat, v'asot et haShabbat v'dorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et haShabbat, v'asot et haShabbat v'dorotam berit olam. U'vayom hashvi'i Shabbat v'inafash, Shabbat v'inafash, Shabbat v'inafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et haShabbat, v'asot et haShabbat l'dorotam berit olam. V'shamru השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. Friends, I ask you to take notice of where you are. Perhaps look around at items in that room. Look around at the fellow members of Temple Israel that are with you here tonight. Note that you are in a community with those that you are always in discussion with, always in conversation with. And that's why we join together as a community, not just on our own at these times. And I hope that you can have a meaningful Amidah as you take a stand with me if you are able. And please rise. And then take, perhaps, if you have room, 3 steps back and 3 steps forward as you begin your Amidah. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei Hakol, v'Zochel Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, u'Mevii Gula Livnei Bneihem, L'ma'an Shemo B'Ahava. Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah Rav lehoshia. Mashiv haruach u'morid ha'gashem. Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim v'rofech cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umido melach, Melech meimit, Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lechayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, U'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Take a moment to use the blessings on the screen for the words of our own heart for silent meditation, and take a seat when your prayer is complete. I want to say Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Great to be with you all. And I want to say that we're not alone tonight. My friends, Chevre, my community, we're actually standing in solidarity with the Union for Reform Judaism, with synagogues across the Reform movement and Jewish world, and what we are known to call this Shabbat service as Repro Shabbat, drawing attention to this dire fate of access to abortion in this country. And Rabbi Mars spoke to me a couple weeks back about how the National Council of Jewish Women, I believe, is mobilizing this effort. And that while I was familiar with this issue, I knew that I personally, and I'm sure many of us, have much more to learn about it. And Rabbi Mars, I was privileged to hear your story this week. And we discussed the issue. And I believe it's the same story that you once shared on the steps of the Capitol building here in Columbus, if I'm not mistaken, perhaps years ago, but it would be great for us all to hear that story once again, if we haven't heard it already, to be reminded of it. So I ask if you can please share that story with our community tonight.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi Klein. I've taken everybody off the screen. You can make me bigger by making the speaker view if you haven't already. And I really am very privileged to share this story with you. At one point, I couldn't even really talk about it. I'll tell you that much. It was never easy to talk about this story, and it's taken me years to kind of sift through it. But I feel very, very grateful that we get the opportunity to talk about reproductive freedom and how it's a Jewish value tonight. That doesn't mean that anybody else's opinions do not matter. At Temple Israel, one thing that I want to reinforce is that everybody's voice matters. So I do feel that my voice in particular is one that I'm ready to raise up. And that means in an activist way and in a way that makes sure that I personally, as a human being, make myself someone who takes on the activism because of my story, but also because of so much that I've learned in the process of living 55 years, but also encountering so many people who are deeply touched, affected by the laws that go along with reproductive health in this country. So I want to share with you very briefly right now a story, my story. It starts actually, we're going to go a little bit bouncing around for a second here. So I want to take you back to March 26, 2019. I appeared along with other faith leaders and medical professionals before lawmakers in the state of Ohio, the State House, who would determine whether Senate Bill 23, also known as the Heartbeat Bill, would be signed into law. And it was the first time that I shared my story outside of my family and my friends and my beloved Temple Israel. And I'd shared parts of my story before with you, but before that Senate Judiciary Committee, I told the lawmakers my story that day, that in 1996, my first pregnancy was deemed medically untenable due to a rare and fatal kidney disorder of our fetus. And so we were very heartbroken. You can imagine me and Or, my husband, and we made the decision in conjunction with our doctor. We made the decision, and in conjunction with many other medical and legal sources, to end our pregnancy. Now that choice was an excruciating one to make. But what made our situation one iota easier was that we had the emotional and physical support of a team of gynecologists, obstetricians, neonatologists, nephrologists, medical ethicists, and others who helped us determine that the fetus would not actually be able to live to become a baby past birth. Had I not been supported by those entities, I told this Senate subcommittee, I don't know whether I would have been able to pursue pregnancy ever again, and gone on to have my 3, thank God, healthy children who are now young adults. And as much as I did say that day when I was at the State House right down the street, I omitted a crucial point about my story, which was this, that my story happened in Israel. I didn't want my beloved Israel, first of all, because it's polarizing, to become the focus of my story. And I also didn't want it to be the entire story. So I left the part about how we got pregnant, and I joined that esteemed cadre of Jerusalem pregnant mamas, and every Shabbat dinner, with friends and family, we measured my belly, and I was part of that, that group of people. And every time we left our OBGYN's office, that first pregnancy, we would make a shechianu just to be at that moment. And then one day we left our doctor appointment, and it changed everything because we had learned about this rare fetal disorder our baby had. 1 in 1.5 million. What are the chances? And how our baby wouldn't survive. And there we were back in 1996, two people who very intentionally decided to have a child, abruptly halted in our tracks, way past the crucial 22-week mark, making this horrifying detour that would change the course of our lives. I was 22 plus weeks pregnant, and we had just reached the moment when the baby's viability, and that's an important word, was becoming possible. So halakha, Jewish law, entered the picture because we were living in Israel. And the dictates of halakha in Israel mandated that my case be reviewed before a vad, a medical rabbinical tribunal. Because the viability of that pregnancy, so close to the magic 24-week mark that constitutes viability in Jewish law to the state, was under the microscope. And so suddenly we're at the mercy of the law, of halakha and of the state of Israel. And so we uttered Tehillim. We had to go and give birth to a baby that was not going to live. And it was utterly crushing. I couldn't talk about it for the longest time, as you can imagine. We went to the Tayelet, we overlooked Jerusalem from the olive groves. And I remember knowing that, we were not going to be able to be there as our little child was being buried. It was a critical, crushing day. And God felt very, very far away as I uttered the words of Tehillim with, or how long will you forget me, Adonai, forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? And I really asked God if this was it. Am I ever going to be able to have a child? And God felt very, very far away that day. The source of all life that had made those shechianus possible was suddenly temporarily gone from my sight. But of course, God did not forget us. And we were very lucky. The Holy One made it possible. And eventually we had Adi, who's now turning 24, Toby, who's turning 22, and Tal, who's turning 20. And I know that all stories do not end this way, with fertility issues and all kinds of obstacles in the way of so many people. But I felt at that moment that thank God for God and modern medicine and the supportive community I lived in, that we were able to have our 3 awesome, healthy children. And my story, I told this back to the State House in 2019. I told them that I thought that this had taught me the significance of what it meant to have a supportive government and legal body to provide me as a female with safety, even with a wanted pregnancy that was not meant to be. And somehow I started seeing that my story that day and beforehand, and even after, that's just one of so many stories, one that encompasses kind of inconceivably all females. Every person who has biologically female reproductive systems is in jeopardy right now of not having the choice and not having the resources around them to help make the choices that determine whether children come into this world. I happen to be, I realize, a cisgendered white female married to a cisgendered white male, both of us highly educated and socioeconomically stable. Plus, I had a special privilege of being there as a faith leader. My voice somehow mattered, and I'm a rabbi. And that put me in a rare position to tell my story that day, and hopefully it planted a seed through that story, and to put a new face to the story of abortion in America in the 21st century. Certainly, I'm not the only person who has a similar story, unfortunately. I even met a woman that day who had, I think, one of the exact same syndrome that prevented her from having her child when she wanted to. So this is a little confusing, but it's all by way of saying Judaism is a faith tradition and a way of life and belief that regards life as being critical. We're going to talk about that in just another minute. But now the important thing to note is that Roe v. Wade, the landmark 1973 Supreme Court decision, which made it safe and legal for women anywhere to have an abortion in America, regardless of the circumstances, is actually at tremendous risk right now of being overturned as soon as this coming June. And that means that communities of color, LGBTQ plus people, people with disabilities, people working to make ends meet, they are at risk of having abortion being banned, potentially this life-saving, as in my case, this life-saving medical procedure is at risk. And I think that this could interfere with patients making decisions which are actually good for them, and it infringes on religious freedom. I have to say that when I tried to draw a picture for those senators that day, the people on that subcommittee, and at the end of the day, the heartbeat bill was passed. The heartbeat bill essentially means that women who up to the moment of the 6th week of conception for a child, women are not allowed to have an abortion past that point. So this means that even imagine it, 12-year-old girl who has some terrible thing happen to her, or decides that she's going to have sex with somebody, ends up getting pregnant, she may not even know that she's pregnant until the 6th week. And by that point, she's not allowed to have an abortion. There's also all kinds of very important stipulations that are put in front of her and barriers put in front of her, such as having to get parental consent to have an abortion, which you can imagine a young 12-year-old girl telling her parents that she's pregnant. How did that happen? Something traumatic may have happened as well. There are all kinds of incest, rape situations as well. The laws in the state of Ohio are very stringent. And as we've seen in Texas, it's very possible for states to go the way of banning altogether abortion. So I feel very close to this issue. And I have a lot of prayers tonight. I have a lot of prayers for women who are in my situation. I have a lot of prayers for people who have unfathomable stories of becoming pregnant and then determining that they either needed to or wanted to halt the pregnancy. And I have a lot of hope. I pray that somehow we can get to a place where men and women, people of all genders and sexualities, colors and the stripes, religions, and ways of life can somehow march together to support the inevitable. Things happen, and we take life so seriously, and that means looking at all sides of this important coin that is really ready to be flipped in an important way that could deprive some people of rights. And I hope that my story doesn't scare you, but actually maybe opens your heart a little bit more to how important each of these stories is. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And Robert Mars, I just want to thank you so much for sharing that story with me, with our congregation. I think your vulnerability, your openness, this is a model for us as what a leader of a community can do. So very grateful to have heard your story. And I want to share a few brief thoughts, what I can in my own perspective, cisgender, straight male, for our community. you shared with me a Times opinion article written by Alana Panik-Linsman, I believe. And I don't know if she's Jewish, but I would make an educated guess that she probably is. And she wrote on this topic on how Roe v. Wade is unlikely to make it to its 50th birthday this year. And so as I was thinking about like what can be said that will actually unify us, in a country that's so bifurcated, that's so divided, black and white, Democrat, Republican. I think one unifying aspect is we all will live with the consequences of what happens if Roe v. Wade does not make it to its 50th birthday. And we can look to what the impact has been in states in which it's essentially already gone, where we see increased poverty, increased load on the foster care system, abusive relationships, high rates of maternal mortality, perhaps unsafe abortion alternatives, disproportionate impacts on marginalized communities. So this sort of after effect of what could be is something that we're all going to have to face. And in addition, we can also look at perhaps in a world that gives us two choices, what can we bring to the table as Jews? I'm very much curious about this concept of defining the pro-life movement. If you ask us, is human life sacred and God-given? We would respond, absolutely. Those of us who have witnessed birth to death or something awe-inspiring in between, we all know this is to be true. We're a life-affirming people who say l'chaim at every single opportunity that we can. But if we're comparing ourselves to the pro-life movement, we can question, do we have the same understanding of what human life is, or do we actually have a staunchly different perspective than what has become a rather Christian-dominated definition of life? And so when I was writing for the Columbus Jewish News for this weekly Torah portion on Mishpat Team, I was reading through the portion once again, and I encountered this famous text of eye for an eye. Now, this is an often misunderstood text, but I actually, through reading the portion, finally encountered its context. And the context is men are fighting, and one of them pushes a pregnant woman, and a miscarriage results. And the discussion is, okay, if that happens, then a payment will be made if she's not harmed, as a judge would determine it. But if she is harmed, and it goes on to say life for a life, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And that's the context of this famous line. And it's often misunderstood, not to be taken literally, but as the rabbis tell us, is actually monetary as well. So if we've got two monetary payments, you might ask, well, how do we contrast the two? And Ibn Ezra, this famous rabbinic commentator from centuries ago in Spain, asked the exact same question and explained it that, well, life for a life, that's a fine that's even greater if the mother is hurt than if just the embryo is hurt. And that's just one text of many in our Jewish tradition that helps us understand the concept of what is of value when we're looking at life. And this most prominently hit me when I was in rabbinical school. And one of the most focused classes I had on Jewish law was when it came to Jewish mourning practices. In terms of, would you be obligated to mourn upon the death of a newborn baby? And through researching on my own about this halakha, the understanding is based on Jewish law, if it's a premature baby that is born, as Jews, we do not consider that baby, even after it's born, to be a human being until after 30 days. Now, if you never encountered this text, like I had in rabbinical school, this might completely surprise you that even something that has already been born is not necessarily considered a human being, and thus obligating us to observe a mourning ritual, right? There's many explanations that can be given for this, about how burdensome Jewish mourning practices are, how rigorous they are really, and how important they are to be used selectively. And in high cases of child mortality, we can't possibly do that. But there's so many different texts that we can encounter to help us understand that this world does not need to be in two different definitions, pro-choice or pro-life. We can say, well, what's the Jewish definition? What's the Jewish way to add to this conversation? And perhaps we can draw from that, enter into conversation with our society and help move the needle forward. But Rabbi Mars, I just want to ask you, where would you like to take us with this conversation?
I just want us to band together, my dear friends. You know, I'm so inspired by the creativity around this issue to get us talking. I'm so grateful for opportunities like Repro Shabbat. I'm really excited about a new group that I just found out about that's called Men for Choice, which tries to activate men to get involved in the showing up and the, even more than they already have been. But this is an all of us thing. And all I want to say is I'm grateful for you giving us the bima tonight. We kind of get the bima every Shabbos, but to be honest, the only reason we could bring it here is because we know that you're a willing, open, loving, thoughtful community. So thank you so much. And I want us to go back to our service, but with like a little chizuk, a little shot in the arm that says, we're going to be together, ready to, thank you, Jenna, for putting that in the chat box, Men for Choice. And if there are any other ways that we can, get together and talk about this more and talk about what life means in that unpolarized way, just because we love it and we want it and we have to, unfortunately, fight for it in so many ways. I'm open to talking to you. I hope that you'll definitely take the time to talk with both of us. And I'm so grateful to have my new friend, Rabbi Sam Klein, also standing beside me as we march together. Ani ve'ata, you and me, Sam, you and all of us, we're going to change the world. So I'm very grateful for everybody's attention tonight, and let's sing a little. Coming back to our service.
As Rabbi Mars said, this is a wonderful tune from Israel, Ani ve'ata, talking about how we can come together as partners in an interdependent society, not on our own. And if you see in the translation, it says, you and I will start from the beginning. So sometimes when it's not currently correct, the way in which we have two different choices, perhaps we can go back to the drawing board and have ourselves redefine to a more healthy argument for the sake of heaven. Please join me. אני ואתה נשנה את העולם. אני ואתה אל יבוא כפר כולם. אמרו את זה קודם לפניי, זה לא משנה. אני ואתה נשנה את העולם. אני ואתה ננסה מההתחלה. יהיה לנו רע, אין דבר זה לא נורא. אמרו את זה קודם לפניי, זה לא משנה. אני ואתה נשנה את העולם.
So we're coming to our Misha Berach, friends. If there's somebody that you're thinking of who is in need of healing, let us pray for them together. If there's somebody that you know is really hurting, we want to make sure that we take this moment to remember them all. I'm going to read our list in just a moment. And you can also put names in the chat box of people for whom you're wishing healing tonight. Misha Berach. We have here on the screen the Debbie Friedman, but I'm going to chant this and then insert the names instead. Misha Berach avotenu v'imotenu, Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, hu yivarech v'yirapeh et hacholim. Lev Heschel ben Batami v'Yaakov, Necha bat Sarah Rivka, Aaron David ben Pia Leah, Harav Tuvia Levi ben Yosef Tzvi Kohen uVatya, Yaakov Yitzchak ben David v'Rachav, Eliyahu ben Sarah, Harav Reuven Shlomo ben Mendel v'Leah, Naomi bat Miriam v'Harav Yosef, Gittel bat Yehuda v'Chaya, Zisel Chana bat Yita Rivka, Leviah bat Rachel, Gavriela bat Nehemiah uDevorah, Avraham Anshel Halevi ben Miriam, Eliana Shai ben Binyamin v'Shira Leah, Sander ben Sarah. We're praying for the healing and health of Miriam bat Simcha v'Shifra, Sarah Masha bat Janesha v'Moshe, Tammy Burke, Jerry Bain, Corey Casperson, Becky Cottle, Pat Cottle, Barton Cohen, Pamela Cohen, Bree Craig, George Dickerson, Larry Footer, Karen Gillen, Warren Grove, Barney Greenbaum, Annette Harris, Ethan Kadish, Helga Kaplan, and also Ray Carlsberger, Delma Killinger, Marilyn Lassen, Bill Lazaro, Cheryl Logan, Gerald McBrearty, Marilyn Mendelman, Hassan Noah, Anthony Paneth, Clark Patton, David Schulman, Harriet Sobolewski, Annette Turner, Tim Vaughn, Mary Lou Wagner, and Herb Weil. O Holy One of Blessing, please speedily bring them to health, strengthen them, guide them, and bring them healing. Venomar Amen. Let us say Amen. We're going to go to our Aleinu tonight, everybody, if you'll please rise. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Please be seated.
Turn our thoughts now to our loved ones who are no longer with us in body, but are certainly still with us in spirit. I invite you to please share names of those who you are remembering tonight as I share those that I'm familiar with in our community. We're observing Shiva for Abi Moser. That's the first week of mourning. And the first 30 days, Shloshim, for Marvin Zeldin and Larry Samuels. We're also observing the Yortzites of Gabriel Abel, Samuel Altman, Jeffrey Craig Cohen, William W. Cohen Sr., Leonard G. Cooper, Lois and Forrest, Lillian B. Friedland, Andy Friedman, Yetta Gabe, Samuel I. Gans, Ethel Greenberger, David King, Rose King, Charles J. King, Newton King, Walter Claren, Alfred J. Kobacker, Donald Mounts, Rose Bloom Monette, Marilyn Nan Mosenter Spiegel, Norman Newmark, Martin Ornstein, Rosalind Pariser, Marcus Ritter, Bertie Sanders, Rose Seremsky, Peter Shedler, M.T. Schwartz, Lester Seligson, Sylvia Shear, Brucey Siegel, Hyman Silverman, Dorothy Sosland, Helen Spire, Dorothy Stein, Ernest Stern, Francis Strasberg, Shirley Sugarman, Eamon Thal, A. Robert Weiler, Abe Weinfeld. We will all those names and those names I see shared in the chat, in our hearts, we say, Zichronam Livracha, may all their memories be for a blessing. If you're not already standing, I invite you to please rise. If you're observing Shiva, the first week of mourning, Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning. Shana, the first 11 months or year of mourning. And if you're observing a yortzeit, please rise. As we comfort the mourners in our community, we rise as one for the Mourners Kaddish. Gadal v'kadash me rabba, be'alma divrach yirteh v'amlich malchuteh, b'chayachon v'yomechon v'chay d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agalal v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'alam almaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'romam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudusha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, kol shv'tevel, v'imru, Amen. So we say these words of the Kaddish, may its repetition bring all of us comfort. And together we say, Amen.
Amen. Please, everyone, be seated. There's so many dear people on that list. Every week, it kind of chokes me up a little bit to see these people we've known and loved, but we wish you much blessing in their memory. Amen. Friends, if you will have a seat, very quick announcements. Yes, you can get 2 tickets to see Ben Platt. So please do participate in our raffle. A nice Jewish boy and very, very talented. You'll know him from Dear Evan Hansen, among other things. A Camp Ramah kid. And it should be a really wonderful opportunity. Please also join us for Jewish meditation tomorrow. Opportunity to breathe together and just be. And also Musar, a study of soul traits with me on Sunday mornings. We're so happy that you joined us tonight. Thank you for being so brave as to come along for the ride. But you know what? Being together makes everything more digestible. If we can mention it, as Mr. Rogers said, we can manage it. So thank you so much for being here. And if you have a glass of something delicious, you know, we can make a little l'chaim, as Rabbi Klein said. There's so much to be grateful for and so much to bless.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'haratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh b'reishit, ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh, zecher l'tziat mitzrayim, ki vanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai mekadesh Shabbat. Amen. L'chaim.
L'chaim. Delish. Okay. And if you have challah, please break it out now, or anything similar for hamotzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Thanks for coming tonight, friends. And we have a final song. So, and stick around for just a second afterwards so you can wish each other Shabbat Shalom. Thanks to our wonderful staff for being here and always saving the day. Shabbat Shalom.
So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And I want to just draw attention. So often we're looking at the calendar and saying, which month is it, January or February? We forget that there's a whole other calendar out there, the Jewish calendar, that guides our lives. And you can follow it perhaps by grounding it in the holidays too. So if you ask yourself, what's the next major Jewish holiday? You might say, well, let's say it's Purim's coming up. And what month is Purim? It's an Adar. You may have heard about this. Our tradition tells us something extremely peculiar for this month that we don't encounter in any other month, which is we're supposed to have a particular emotion this month. We're supposed to be happy, right? Now, I understand you may not be feeling that way right now, but I hope you are, because looking around this, I see a lot of wonderful people, and it brings happiness for me to see all these new members of my community here tonight. So thank you for being with us. You bring me happiness, and I can't wait to see you when we get back together in person in the month of Adar, celebrate Purim and many other holidays together. So please join me in singing this song, saying, and on Adar, we got to increase our happiness. We have to increase our joy. It's pretty fun. Here we go. It goes like this. Mishe, 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 Nichnas Adar. Try that. Mishe, 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 Nichnas Adar. Mishe, Nichnas Adar, Marvin Simcha. Mishe, Nichnas Adar, Marvin Simcha. One more time. Mishe, 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 Nichnas Adar. Mishe, 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 Mishe,